There are days when we wake up already tired. The day hasn't even started, and our bodies feel as heavy as if we'd run a marathon in our sleep. The problem is, this exhaustion isn't just physical. It's something subtler, deeper. It's as if the soul is dragging invisible chains. We've done everything right, worked hard, exercised, tried meditating. Yet, the fatigue lingers, lurking in the mirror. It's not laziness. It's as if we're trapped in a system where, even at rest, we're still expected to produce. And worse, the pressure now comes from within, from our own minds. Modern society has replaced the external whip with internal self-demand disguised as freedom. Before, someone else told you what to do. Now, you push yourself forward, nonstop. It's a constant. I need to be better. I need to achieve more. I need to make the most of my time. This need never goes away, even during leisure. We don't read a book because we love it. We read because we need to grow. We don't go to the gym because we enjoy it. We go because we need discipline. And that's where a new kind of exhaustion is born. The exhaustion of performance. It's as if life has become a showcase of productivity. But no one can live under a spotlight all the time. And this showcase is treacherous because we step into it smiling, believing that being productive all the time will lead to fulfillment. But deep down, we're just performing an unattainable ideal. Every like, every compliment, every new habit adopted becomes another piece in the heavy armor we wear. It's a silent cycle. And the scariest part? We call this evolution. Exhaustion is now celebrated. Saying, I'm too busy makes you seem important. A packed schedule looks like success. But is this really the way? Or are we getting sick without even realizing it? You know that feeling of freedom they sell us? That idea that we're now masters of our own destiny. Free to create, choose our paths? Well, it sounds beautiful on paper. But when you look closely, you realize this so-called freedom is just a new packaging for the same old exhaustion, now with more sophisticated marketing. We no longer have bosses yelling orders, but we have an internal voice demanding, pressuring, judging. And the curious thing is, this voice sounds like ours. But is it really? Or was it shaped, little by little, by a system that convinced us that being free means being productive all the time? Byung-Chul talks about this with unsettling clarity. We live in an era where the individual is exploited by themselves. And the worst part, they believe it's freedom. Self-management has become a golden shackle. We treat ourselves like a business. We set goals, review results, optimize time. And if we fail, it's not the system's fault. It's ours, because we didn't measure up. This destroys something very subtle within us, the right to make mistakes, to rest, to be bored. Even boredom has been turned into something unproductive, unwanted. But what if it's in the void that the deepest ideas are born? Let's be honest. The feeling of being in control is seductive. We love the story of being masters of our destiny. But we forget that even this was designed. The capitalism of performance is clever. It doesn't impose, it seduces. It doesn't force, it enchants. And without realizing it, we become our own jailers, trapped in a cycle of self-improvement that never ends. There's always room to be more, always room to improve. And this constant thirst leaves us exhausted, not from working, but from never being enough. This isn't freedom. It's disguised control. And the truth is, sometimes stopping would already be a revolutionary act. We usually think of violence as something visible. Shouts, punches, abuse. But there's another form, subtler, more dangerous, that sneaks in without us noticing. It's the violence of toxic positivity, hyperdemand, constant comparison. A violence that doesn't hurt the body, but drains the soul. And the cruelest part, today's society calls this progress. When someone says, you can do it, just want enough, it sounds motivating. But it's not always. Sometimes, it's just another way to push someone beyond their limits. And when they break, it's not the system that fails. It's them, always them, alone with their guilt. This is the kind of violence no one sees. It disguises itself as encouragement, hides behind smiles, goals, colorful charts. But it eats away at us from the inside. Because humans weren't made to perform without pause, to evolve without limits. We're made of cycles, highs and lows. But the culture of performance doesn't accept this. It wants a self that's always available, always willing, always strong. But we're not machines. We have fears, insecurities, exhaustion that doesn't fit into spreadsheets. And when we try to suppress all that to fit into this mold, the soul screams. And the way it screams is through burnout. That's why so many people are broken inside, even if they seem fine on the outside. We live in a time where pressure doesn't come from above, but from all sides. Social media, coaches, influencers, colleagues, our own thoughts. Everything seems to be telling you to do more, be more, have more. And in this avalanche, we forget to ask, more for what? This collective exhaustion we're feeling isn't normal. It's a symptom, a cry for help. But as long as we treat it as individual weakness, we'll keep rowing against an invisible current. And maybe it's time to stop rowing and start looking at where we're heading. There's a silent pain almost no one dares to confess. The constant feeling of not being enough. Have you ever felt that? That impression that no matter how hard you try, you're still falling short. As if there's an invisible ruler measuring everything you do. And you never reach the top. We keep smiling, delivering reports, taking care of the house, trying to be present. But inside, the void grows. And it doesn't grow because you're weak. It grows because we're trapped in a logic where existence itself has become a goal. Being has turned into doing. Value has turned into performance. And rest has turned into guilt. This pressure comes disguised as aspiration. They tell you you need to chase your best version. That you have to reinvent yourself. Grow, hustle, study, wake up at 5 a.m., network, excel at work, have a social life, read books, take care of your body, mind, and soul. But no one says that trying to sustain all this at once, without stumbling, is almost inhuman. And when we can't keep up, and eventually we won't, comes the guilt. You didn't try hard enough. You lack focus. Maybe you're not disciplined enough. And this discourse meant to motivate only sinks us deeper. Because it's not just exhaustion anymore. It's the weight of thinking the problem is us. But what if the problem isn't you? What if you're trying to run with your feet tied? We live in an era where self-worth is tied to how much we produce. And that's a prison. Because at some point, we all fail. And if our value depends on performance, what's left when performance fails? Modern exhaustion has this poison. It not only tires us, it convinces us we're not worthy of stopping. That stopping is wasting time. That resting is failing. And that's where many collapse in silence. Because no one wants to admit they've reached their limit. But the truth is, acknowledging exhaustion might be the first step to escaping this trap. And maybe what we need isn't more effort, but more courage to stop hurting ourselves. The body has an ancient wisdom. It speaks to us all the time. But we've learned to ignore it. We push through headaches with coffee, anxiety with distractions, insomnia with pills, back pain with quick stretches. And we keep going. But there comes a point when the body screams, and we can no longer pretend not to hear. It's the fatigue that won't go away, the racing heart for no reason, the memory failing, the appetite disappearing, the body saying, "You've crossed your limits." And the saddest part is, many of us only stop when we get sick. We only listen when we break, because we've been taught not to stop. Byung-Chul warns that this violence of performance is so silent it consumes us from within. And who suffers first? The body. Because it's the first to feel the impact of a rhythm that doesn't respect human cycles. Today, if you're not exhausted, it seems like you're living wrong. Exhaustion has become a trophy. But this trophy comes at a high price. The mind, under constant pressure, begins to collapse. And when the mind suffers, the body reacts. It's the pain that appears without explanation, the chronic muscle tension, the sleep that doesn't renew, the nervous system on constant alert. And we think it's normal to live like this. But it's not. The body asks for a pause. And when it asks, it's because the soul has already screamed and no one listened. Masking symptoms with pills or motivational Instagram quotes won't help. That just covers up what's really hurting. What heals isn't sweeping it under the rug, but embracing it, listening, respecting. Sometimes what we need isn't more productivity, but more presence. Less noise and more silence. Less obligation and more connection. Because while the mind gets lost in demands, the body tries to keep us alive. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to listen to what it's been trying to tell us for so long. Have you noticed how we no longer know how to be silent? Any empty space becomes an invitation to fill it. If there's a line, we grab our phones. If there's a moment of boredom, we turn on a video. If there's spare time, we try to do something useful. Contemplation, the simple act of just being, has almost become a sin. Modern society has trained us to be consumers of stimuli. Everything needs to have a function, a goal, a return. And in this, we've lost touch with what serves no purpose but feeds the soul. Idleness, silence, nothingness. The pause. That fertile pause that generates reflection, that heals. Byung-Chul shows us that the lack of contemplation is one of the greatest symptoms of the performance society, because those who contemplate stop, and those who stop escape. And the system doesn't want you to escape. It needs you to always be connected, comparing, consuming, responding, producing. It's a high-tech, low-awareness prison. And the craziest part? We think we're in control. But in practice, we're just reacting, living on autopilot, losing the ability to marvel at the simple, to look at the sky without grabbing our phones to take a picture, to listen to music without doing something else at the same time. Contemplation isn't a waste of time. It's reconnection. It's when the soul breathes. It's when we realize there's life beyond goals, beyond feeds, beyond productivity. When we stop contemplating, we become more anxious, more impatient, more empty. Because we stop accessing a deep part of our humanity. The part that feels, observes, is moved by detail. And maybe, in this frenetic world, the true luxury is being able to sit in silence and watch a tree swaying. It seems small, but it's in that moment that a peace no productivity course will ever give you resides. And if you feel like something's missing but can't name it, maybe that's what your soul is talking about. Deep down, maybe what's missing in our lives isn't more discipline, focus, or productivity. Maybe what's missing is humanity. We've drifted away from who we are, tried to become optimized versions of an unattainable ideal. We've forgotten that humans fail, get tired, have bad days, doubts, crises. But all this has been erased by a standard of perfection disguised as self-improvement. And in this attempt to be flawless, we become hard, too demanding, not just with others, but with ourselves. Self-compassion has been forgotten. Forgiveness has become weakness. Pausing has become laziness. And feeling has become a problem to be managed. But what if we dared to be imperfect? What if real power lay in accepting the cracks, the pauses, the messiness? There's a beauty in admitting we don't know everything, that we can't always handle it all, that sometimes we need to cry, ask for help, say, I can't do it today. This vulnerability scares us because it seems fragile. But in truth, it's where the strength of being alive resides. We don't need more time management techniques. We need more connection, more true presence, more listening, more hugs, more slow coffee and less rush. Because at the end of the day, what remains isn't how much we did. It's how alive we felt while doing it. Of course, the world won't stop to wait for us to find ourselves again. But maybe, just maybe, we can start walking at a different pace. Our own pace. One that respects our limits. That celebrates the simple. That looks at others with less judgment and more compassion. This isn't utopia. It's resistance. In a world that wants to turn you into a machine, being human has become a revolutionary act. And maybe, just maybe, by a return to being human, we'll start breathing again. And when that happens, exhaustion might give way to something new. Something that doesn't yet have a name, but that you'll recognize when you feel it.